what I would like to talk about in the next, 15 minutes is not only the content of the book, but the process and how and why I gave birth to my 8th book, and give you a little bit of insight was what my thoughts were with what I struggled during that process. As you probably all know, I'm working with Diana and Victor, so with co-hubs for quite a while now. And since last year, I'm a co-partner at co-hubs. And what I found out very quickly that all that we do with the platform, so the effects that customers can expect when they work with a platform, can be explained from a systems thinking perspective. So this is the perspective I take on when I look at organizations. And that was quite exciting for me because I found out, oh, great, we can explain it this way. And this we can underpin it theoretically. That's great. And every time we discuss that, Victor tend to say, yeah, go ahead, write a book about that. But it was not the right point in time. And so I said, no, come on, don't bother me with that. And at the same time, I still facilitated workshops quite a lot. So a lot of management teams. And from time to time, I sat in those workshops and found out that I'm completely bored. Or I got annoyed because of the way that the people talk to each other. So I call it, they just chatter. They didn't discuss concrete problems, nor did they discuss a relationship between the solution and any kind of problem. There were no pauses. There were just argument by argument. And it didn't really make sense when you observe that from the outside, so to say. And I continued thinking about that. So why does that happen? No matter which company, so which industry a company is in, what the people, which position they have, why does that happen? And what could be an idea to get out of that? And at some point in time, I came up with the idea that so many change processes fail, that the people are so tired of change because they, from time to time, choose inappropriate instruments to make the change happen. And they do that because, so, and this is just my thought, or the post or the line in which I was thinking, they choose inappropriate mechanisms because they do not talk to each other appropriately, not detailed enough. And this is why, because they do not think together. And when I look at all those people in the workshops, and I don't blame the people for that. This is a social game that's happening all over again. Is well, hopefully they are thinking individually, but most of the time they just repeat what they have thought for ages, and it's not even any kind of collective thinking at all. And so I came up with those 3 words called thinking, discourse, change. And then I went back to Diana and Victor and discussed or talked about with them about my great idea of how that could be phrased and what to observe and what to explore. And yeah, take a guess. Victor said, "Yeah, great, write a book about that." And where he hit it at one point in time, I said, "Okay, I'm going to write it." And so I came up with a book called Thinking Together, Changing Efficaciously, the Organizational Discourse as Key to Change. And the first part of the book is about some principles that I find very important when you want to change a complex social system like organizations are. And it's about what we could think about organizations, about change, about learning, because change always is some kind of organizational learning, what we think about communication, stuff like that. And it's a lot about my systems thinking perspective. So it's inspired by cybernetics, synergetics, the social systems theories. So a very systems thinking perspective. Well, for sure. So check. But then there was the second part of the book when it's all about the discourse itself. And there I really had to learn myself a lot about what could that be? How could that look like? How can that be addressed? How can you make it fail? And I'm not sure if one of you has ever read books about discourse or dialogue. You quickly come across the guys like David Bohm, which is the godfather of dialogue, and gave a lot of inspiration to the organizational discourse. But more than that, I came across some quite popular philosophers, Jürgen Habermas and Michel Foucault. So the one is German, the other one is French. And these guys worked a lot on the topic of discourse and had very different perspectives on that. But I would like to introduce them quite briefly to you because I think it's not just interesting and fun to think about, but also very practical. So as you probably know, Jürgen Habermas wrote a lot about his discourse ethics. And this means that whenever people talk to each other very rationally and in a kind of a power-free or rule-free context, then what morally is right to them will emerge. So whenever they have a rational conversation, so to say, they will find the norm that fits best for them. And to make that happen, he formulated two principles. The first is the principle of discourse. That means that the norms has to be valid for all the participants in that discourse. So as long as somebody is saying, we're talking about agility, no, I don't believe in that construct at all, I'm out. Then the norm cannot be valid for the group, of course, because it will just be a compromise in the end. The second principle is the universalization principle, which means that the norm, when you apply it, is generally valid for all the people, and they all can live with the effects and consequences with no constraints. And this may sound abstract, first of all, but it isn't. And in the book, I give an example. Imagine a workshop with a lot of people discussing the values of the organization, which is quite popular, right? And there's the CEO in that workshop as well, and they're discussing a lot of values that they want to live. And he's saying, yeah, well, there's one that is on top, and this is called fairness. No matter what, fairness is one of our values, full stop. And so they put fairness on their list of values and had that poster that is now is hanging on the walls in the marketing department. And you can use the discourse ethics from Jürgen Habermas to take a look at what they were really discussing and if that will come alive in the end or not. And so you can just take a look at the value of fairness and apply the discourse principle. Can everybody agree to fairness as a value? Sure. Nobody will say, no, I believe in being unfair all of my life, so that's fine. Applying the universalization principle, you can easily find out that this will not come true. Because when you look at the structure of that company, you find out that the purchasing department has a KPI to really squeeze their suppliers, and the sales guys have KPIs on actual turnover. So they are not asked to be fair in how they should work and what the output of their work should be. And if an organization takes really a look in the mirror when they discussing those things, they can easily find out if this makes sense or if you could just stop talking, in this example, talking about values that you like to have, but you may not live at any point in time. And so the other guy, Michel Foucault, is, well, for me, a very interesting philosopher. And he, no matter which topic, he worked a lot around power and how does that work in society. And he's saying, so Michel Foucault is saying that in any discourse, we are creating the things we're talking about. So they're not there before. As soon as we start talking, using specific words, start to create new ones, we are forming exactly these things. And that we create our common social truth. So it's not just we're finding the right argument or the right opinion, but we're creating our collective opinion. And I think that this is quite important to any kind of organization when we, for example, start talking about low performers and high performers or whatever you can imagine. At the point where we start talking about that, we're creating them. So it's not the other way around. And this is something that we should be more aware of from my perspective. Being aware of which phrases, which words, which categories we use to describe something. And Habermas is saying discourse is, so rationality will win it no matter what. And Michel Foucault says, no, that's bullshit, because discourse is always power-driven and power-forming. So there's a big mismatch between those two guys. And I think it's worth looking at both ideas and opinions, no matter if there is any kind of distinction. And so Michel Foucault also said that society and organization is just one part of society, has one purpose, so to say, and that is to discipline the people. It's always about inclusion and exclusion. And according to him, because he said we should think of society or organization in terms of its systems for punishment and discipline. And he, of course, he looked at historical discourses and analyzed them. And one discourse he wrote a lot about is how we treated criminals. So when you think back in the Middle Age, they were took to the market and they were tortured and punished, and everybody could watch them. And there was a point in time where the discourse about criminals changed, and then what followed then were prison. So then they were put away to prison. The public couldn't watch that any longer. It was kind of hidden, no matter what then happened. And how the prisons were created is quite an interesting story as well. But what I would like to point out here is we're having the same mechanisms in our organizations. From time to time, we put things away from public and put them somewhere else. We're not going to put them to prison. But if we, for example, think of those new work, agile companies who got rid of their hierarchical leadership levels, so no more formal power positions any longer, they kind of put them away. You cannot see the formal power in this way any longer. But this doesn't mean that nothing is happening. There's a lot of stuff going on behind. So, but you can't see because it's not on the market any longer. It's hidden somewhere else. And so for me, it's just more kind of a reminder. Whenever we change things, well, obviously, and there are aspects that we do not see any longer, doesn't mean that they're not there and they're not having effects on the organization. And so I was in the middle of some contradictions, as you can imagine. And besides that, the rest of the book is full of contradictions anyway, because of the systems thinking guys and ladies who haven't finished to agree on a definition of what a system really is and what an organization is, and does it consist of people or of communication, and communication itself? Does it start with the sender or the receiver? So there's a whole lot of contradictions. And I kind of struggled with that in between, because I thought, do I have to smooth that? Do I have to get rid of those contradictions to make it easy and nice and smooth for the readers of the book? And I then decided, no, I leave them as they are for good reason. When I think of myself, when I'm faced with those contradictions, it's, well, from time to time they really annoy me, and I say, come on, go away. I want to stay with my thoughts as they are. Leave me alone. But at the same time, I feel invited to start thinking. And if I am faced with contradictions, I have to make up my mind. I have to think that through in detail. And this is not only always a nice process as an author. This really hurts from time to time, because I want to fill the pages. I want to finish a book. I want to move on. But that's not always the process. So I really have to sit down and think things through and come up with my mind. And so this is what I'm doing in the book. I'm presenting my opinion and what I think, which views I use when and why and what. But in the end, I leave a lot open to the reader. And I think this, well, hopefully this is understood as an invitation to think on your own for yourself. And so this maybe is the imposition that the book comes along with. So it's not smooth, not everything is explained. There is no 5-point action plan for guaranteed success for everything. It's the opposite. It's an invitation for really thinking together with your team, your colleagues, your partners, and really think in detail and come up with a good way of having a conversation about that, and we're in the end making change more likely and more successful. Though that's the whole secret in a nutshell. And so for today, we would like to present you. I think there are two theses that may be irritating, maybe not. We will find out. And that we would like to invite you to share your ideas, your thoughts, your assumptions, your mental models around them, and go into a very quick and short, but hopefully fruitful conversation about them.